All righty, everybody. Well, hey, our next amazing guest on International Podcast Day is the host of Inspired Conversations with Amy Schuber. It's the one, the only Amy Schuber joined us this morning. What is going on, Amy?
Hi, Scott. I'm so excited to be here with you. This is so much fun. You put together such a cool thing for everybody.
Well, we're all pretty cool, so it's pretty easy job when I bring on cooler people than me to do this. But for those that don't know who Amy is, I pulled up your bio here. She creates effortless strategies will help to bridge the gap between business vision and successful execution. With her insight and guidance, Amy can clear the path for you to achieve your most audacious goals. I love that adjective, audacious goals. Has been having inspired conversations with some of the foremost thought leaders in health, wellness, spirituality, and entrepreneurship since 2014. With over 425 episodes to choose from, explore the conversation will lead you to inspired action. So I have been enjoying your podcast, and like I said, binging it the last couple of days. Great conversations, just absolutely great stuff. But I'm so honored to have you on today, Amy.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun to be here with you. And you know what's exciting about today that people may or may not know? Today, 4 years ago today, was the day I launched my podcast.
Hey, awesome stuff.
Celebrating the launch of my podcast 4 years ago.
Little did you know you launched it on the first international podcast. That was the first podcast day, actually.
I know. It was intentional.
Wow.
Yeah. Because when I was planning it out, I thought, what's going to make me do it and what's going to make me remember? And so that was like a thing. It was like International Podcast Day. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it that day and I'll always remember. So it was intentional.
Very good stuff. Very good stuff. So take a second to share a little bit more about who Amy is out there. And for those that are listening, those that are watching, those that are hearing the replay on iTunes, all that stuff, who's Amy? What drives Amy on a daily basis?
Oh my gosh, that could go so many different directions, right? But I am someone who has come to know myself in a new way recently, and I launched my podcast 4 years ago as a platform to start like sharing my voice and what was interesting to me, partly to be like a business thing as well. But actually what became of it was something way different, which I could probably circle back to. But who I am is up to like helping people be their best selves, be their best in business, be their best in their relationships, be their best whatever they're showing up in their lives. And that's what I love to support with people. When I launched out into the entrepreneur world, I worked for corporate for many years. And when I was just totally unfulfilled in that, I just like took a leap and left. And that was 14 years ago. And during that time when I was like searching and discovering and doing all that for myself, I went to the women's conference. Maria Shriver was sharing, and a poem she said at the very last line, this Hopi poem, was, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." And in that moment, I realized, I've been asking everybody advice. I've been looking around. I've been trying to search, and I'm the one. I have the answers. So when you say like, who are you? It's like, I'm so many different things, right? I'm a podcaster. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a woman business owner. I'm a friend. I'm an aunt, and all these things. But at the end of the day, it's like, I want to be who I am, true to my heart. And that's always ever evolving. Many years ago, I would have been like, I would have defined myself as all the corporate titles I had, a marketing leader and this and that and all those things. But now it's like, who I am is like, I really want to be this person who supports other people to have, find themselves, find their greatest life. And for me, I'm a business strategist too, so it's like interesting because I talk all this woo woo, but it leads right back to like business strategy. Because if we don't know who we are in our work and in our jobs, wherever we're showing up, we're not going to be any good to anyone, and least of all ourselves. And during that discovery time I had, that's what I was finding. I was struggling. I was kind of all over the board and nothing was landing with me. And so it was kind of interesting to, circle back to myself and then do that self-discovery. And my podcast was a part of that, because as I was building my business, I did a telesummit with all these inspiring conversations. And then when it was over, I was like, now what do I do? Like, now what do I do with that? It was super fun, but now what do I do? And so someone said, one of my friends was like, well, you should do a podcast. And I was like, what's a podcast? So I learned about podcasting. And so I'm curious. I'm, a smart, savvy businesswoman. I'm a connector. I'm a podcaster. I'm so many things. And I'm going to be so many things too, right? Like, I don't even know. I'm ever evolving. So it's kind of a woo answer.
No, but I loved it when you first mentioned about that. We are all the answers to our own question, our own what we're looking for.
Yeah.
We're really our own savior, because it all comes down, no matter who we listen to or who we talk to. I think the biggest thing, and I think you probably, listening to your show, I've heard this from your guests after guests about them taking action, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what would you say has probably been, I mean, launching the podcast and learning and leaving your corporate job because you weren't happy. So many people get, shackled into the job or stuff that they hate. How are you helping people overcome that kind of stuff?
Well, you know what? There's so many things. It's really getting back to yourself. So we have this long journey. One of my coaches once said, the longest journey you'll ever take is that 12 inches between your head and your heart. And that was exactly what I was going through, right? And I was asking everybody like, oh, when I first started a business, it was a total product business, baby business thing. And I went to this entrepreneur group to sort of sort it out. And I was asking, oh, should I call it this? Should I do this? What should I do? And I was getting tons of feedback that I didn't really want. And I didn't know I was asking questions versus making statements like, this is who I am and what I'm showing up doing. It's a totally different thing when you're asking people, because you'll get the feedback, versus making the statement of who you are and what you're doing in the world. But from that experience, I was asked to take over this women's group in Orange County, and that kicked the door open to everything that I'm doing now. Lo and behold, like 12 years later, the interviewing the women entrepreneurs and for the meetings, fed right into my podcasting skills, So what I would have people do is connect back to yourself. Listen, like, are you asking for people's feedback, or are you making a statement and grounding yourself in who you are? And this is what I'm up to, no matter what it is. I'm going to be the CEO of this company, or I'm going to start my own company, or I'm going to be the best artist ever. Ground into that, and then make these claims for yourself, and then go forward in your claim. Because what will happen is, if you go asking people, you will get the answers that they're going to give you, and then you're going to say, oh, I don't like that, or I don't want that answer. But if you make the claim and tell people what you're up to, like, hi, I'm a podcaster, hi, I'm a business strategist, it starts a different conversation, and people receive it from you, and then they ask you questions rather than feed you feedback that you may not want.
Can you walk us through kind of that process, how you do that? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so for me, when I start working with clients, and usually I'm working with people who are in business, so we're usually leading back to themselves and their business. So we do an evaluation, and we start talking about your vision. We start talking about your goals. We start talking about your purpose, and we start talking about, your mission and what you're up to in a bigger realm, like a bigger bird's eye view. And then we start backing out of it so we can create the strategies and the real tactical tools in order to achieve those things. So what happens is, I think what people do is, we don't always ground ourselves in our values, or we don't always be grounded in the clarity of what our purpose is. And that was what I was experiencing. I was sort of like, oh, I'm on this mission to find my purpose. What is it? And I wasn't taking the time to sink into myself. And so there's a whole lot of things you can do to do this. So it's really spending time with yourself. Like, that head to the heart part that I was talking about is really what you've got to do. You've got to take the time to have that self-discovery, whether it's for your business, like, what are you doing in your business, and why are you doing it? And what are your values? And are they showing up with your team members? And are they showing up in how you're training people? And are they showing up in the messaging that you're creating? And then same with, like, if it's your podcast, where are you in your mission for your podcast, or your values with it? And you have to, like, go through some of these exercises to create what it is you want to create for yourself, so you have that foundation. And all that is really building that foundation. And sometimes you've got to go for a walk. Sometimes you've got to create a meditation practice. Sometimes you've just got to, like, have a brain dump and write everything that your to-do list down and get it all out. I mean, there's all these little simple exercises to get you back to this, but what you've got to do is just start the work and start the process with what it is that you're creating for yourself, and have that awareness of who you are. And what I found was, like, I was the pinball in the pinball machine, kind of bouncing off of everybody else's ideas, and I wasn't grounded in what I wanted to create for myself in my business, in my life. So then when my podcasting experience came along, I was like, oh yeah, this totally fits with what I want to do and what I want to create in the world, because I'm a curious person. I like to have conversations. Part of my genius is in the conversation and this kind of stuff, in the connecting. And so that fed right into it. So I was an obvious yes. And when you do that groundwork and build that foundation for yourself, you can be a really yes, and a really hard no. And that keeps you on path as well.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I love listening to your show because you've asked questions and you let them talk. I think a lot of guests, and not anybody on here, but a lot of people getting a podcast are so used to wanting to ask the next question, they're not listening to the answer beforehand. And you do a great job of listening. I was just listening to I can't remember the guy's name, talking about how he was going through, his wife had gotten sick and he'd gotten sick, and he was a breadwinner. He was going through struggles of being a vegan and everything like that. And he talked about it, and he's got a book coming out about it. It was just a great episode. Sorry, I'm going blank on it. I can't find the note here on the show. That's fast as I was looking for my show notes. But being willing to listen, I think, is a lost art. Would you agree to that?
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? You know how sometimes we start doing something and we don't realize our skills are going to be reflected back to us? When I started doing my podcast, like personally, I'm a good presence in the room. I'm a listener. I'm an observer. But I've always been told I'm shy or quiet. So it's interesting because just recently I'm learning like, oh, people call me this, but I'm actually that. And so what's been reflected on my show, doing all these interviews, people would say to me like, wow, you're a really great listener. People who've been interviewed, famous people. One of the first people that said that to me, I was like, whoa. And she had said it to me in the telesummit part. So I was like, oh, I must be onto something because I am a good listener, right? So I was like, oh, I can do this. And what happens is we hear what people are talking about and we want to, share it. But when we respond to people, that's what people want. Most people listen with what they're going to say next. And when you can really like ground in and listen and then be responsive, there's such power in that. And it's really important. And that's a skill that I was like, oh, I didn't know this is one of my superpowers versus being like, I'm the quiet one in the room. Well, I'm not just quiet. I'm observing and I'm witnessing and I'm taking it all in, and I can be responsive to a lot of things that are going on. You just don't know it.
Exactly. Yeah. That is so true. What's the biggest tip you can give to somebody looking to start a podcast out there? I know I basically asked that just about everybody here. What's your biggest tips you can give to somebody who's listening, who's thinking about starting a podcast on podcast day like you did 4 years ago, or things rock and rolling?
I mean, I would say just start. There's so many barriers to entry that you don't need to let be barriers, just start. And I think one of my biggest tips would really be to get connected with why you're doing it. What is the subject matter? Is it you talking all the time, or are you interviewing people? Like, what's your why around it? It could be really simple. It's just because you're really passionate about the subject and you want to talk about it. Great. Stay tuned to your why. And then if you are in a conversation type style, podcast, if in an interview, do your preparation, do your work, because it's your show. And yes, you're highlighting somebody, but if you can be prepared, you can be in a deeper listening when you're actually in the conversation, because you know who the person is, you know what they're wanting to talk about, and you can take it somewhere surprising, and I think that's my favorite part, when I know people want to show up and talk about their book, and then we have a whole different conversation. And then at the end, I'm like, oh yeah, and you have this book coming out. That to me is super cool. But that's because you prepare. That's because you're really conscious of what's going on in that space, and it's your space. So you get to do whatever you want with it. So show up wholeheartedly and just own it. And honestly, just start, because it's super fun. It's going to take you on a ride that you will have no idea about. 4 years ago, I would have never thought I would have been in this community of podcasters that are super amazing, super supportive, giving me tips and tricks, and my friends, I've made some amazing friends, and we don't all live in the same neighborhood, which is crazy. And it's super cool. So I would say go for it and be yourself in it all too.
Mm-hmm. You've got some fans out there. Phoebe says, love me some Amy Schuber. Samantha Shagayan. Amy Schuber is amazing. Love-inspired conversations. Debbie Deschinger, awesome Amy Schuber. Ashley, you got your little fan club rock and rolling. Exactly. What is with what you're doing with working with clients? What has been the biggest aha moment, or maybe the most surprising aha from you working with clients?
It's the biggest thing that always surprises me is that it always comes back to personal stuff. People want to come to me and they want to get focused on a business strategy because they have this one particular goal. Maybe it's increasing revenue. Maybe it's having a better customer service team. And it could be all these things. It's right. And all that's easy. It's like marketing strategies, tactics. There's tools for all that. But what it really comes back to is the person who is running the show. So whatever's going on with you trickles down. You know what I mean? Whether you're a solopreneur or you are running a team of 50 people, whatever's going on with you it trickles down. So if you're in a great space, amazing. You're going to like bring everyone with you. If you're in a terrible space and you're faking it, they're going to feel it. And I think you always have to really stay connected with yourself first, and then you connect yourself with your business. And when you're connected with your business and aligned, so when you're aligned and then you're aligning with your business in that truth of who you are and what you're up to and creating in the world, no matter what it is, it doesn't matter. You are so much more powerful. You are so much more smart about your communication. You are so much more connected. You're so much more approachable by your team. And people want to show up for you because they feel your authenticity and they feel your connection. And I think it always surprises me that it always comes back to us. You know, it always leaves it back to our personal thing. It's like, can you get up and put your CEO hat on or your marketing director hat on or whatever it is, the role that you're taking on that day? Totally. But if you're faking it, and I was faking it in corporate, so I know from on the other side of it, like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to go to work ever in some of my jobs because I just didn't like them, and it's like, when I did that, I wasn't a success. I wasn't efficient. I wasn't making my numbers, but I didn't know that was the secret trick, and it's kind of that secret trick that no one talks about. But when you can really be connected with yourself and that foundation for however you show up, and especially in business, so much stuff is going to be on your side and it's going to be so much easier. And I know it doesn't sound like it connects sometimes, but it really is true. You will have bigger fans. You'll have a bigger employee staff that will support you because you're truthful and authentic and you're really committed to the work. And that goes back to knowing your values, Oh,
that's so true. You to thy own self be true, I guess is the word, right?
Right. It's simple, but it's not always easy.
It's not always easy. But you mentioned something there too, especially people get in the corporate world. A lot of times when people have a job, they get beat down and move their square peg. They're forced to become in a round hole, right?
Yeah.
And anytime they step out of that, they get penalized, or that's not my job to do. I'm not paid to do that. That's hard for a lot of people when they leave that to look at doing something and have to think outside the box or be something that they are used not to being, right?
Yeah. And one of the reasons I started Inspired Conversations, and that it's like maybe all over the board, because some people have a specific show and it's about marketing strategies and it's a specific conversation. One of the reasons mine is about wellness, well-being, spirituality, business strategy. Those are all the things that feed me. And I'm not one-dimensional. Especially as an entrepreneur, I am a curious person. I'm constantly learning. I want to know all these different things. And there's certain silos in my world that I need to feed in order for me to show up 100% Amy wherever I am, whether it's with family or whether it's with relationships, whether it's with my team, whether it's myself working on a business thing, and so for me, it was important for me to let all that stuff feed me. And so it's like, for me, it was interesting because I surrendered a lot when I started my podcast, and I started letting different conversations come in, and I started having conversations that I was like, whoa, I didn't know I was going to be talking about this. But on some level, it fed me, and I'm not one-dimensional, and I know other people aren't either. And we need to have that balance, dare I say that word, balance, but we've got to have the resources to figure out what it is that creates that balance for us. If that's even a true statement, balance, it's like we all define our own balance,
Totally true. Amy, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Oh my gosh, you can find me at amyschuber.com, also inspiredconversations.net, where all my shows are, but mostly Amy Schuber with a B.
Yes, with a B. That's funny. I kept Googling for your bio, and I kept bringing up the actress. Like, no, I'm not looking for Amy Schuber, the actress. I want Amy Schuber. Very exactly, right?
Yeah, I mean, I might be funny, but I just don't get paid for it.
Well, guys and gals, go out there, listen to Inspired Conversations with Amy Schuber, leave a review, check her out. Amy's an expert at what she does, and you can't go wrong with that. So, Amy, once again, thank you so much for being a part of Podcast Day 2018. Honored to have you here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. Thanks, Scott.
No problem. Thank you so much. All right. So that will bring on our next guest here. One of the guys that were here who brought us all together to be a part of this. Let's go on here. Boom, boom, boom. Done with that. 1 second here, everybody. Stop recording. Yeah.